Hi everyone, welcome to Share Explores, where we talk to different experts about community so you don't have to.
And today's guest is Avani Parekh, who is like our community godmother. She's now pivoting to something super dear to her heart, working on women's midlife health from a community perspective. She's also an OG in community building, so if you know, you know. She's got experience at Meta and Love Doctor and over 10 years of work supporting women from the Indian diaspora and other immigrant communities facing domestic violence. Avni, welcome to our podcast.
Thank you both. It feels like a conversation with friends, so I'm just super excited for us to. I think we're going to go deep, so let's just start.
We have the signature question that we ask everybody, which is what do you believe is the absolute truth about community?
Not everyone needs to build a community. Everyone. This isn't the first time that I've said this out loud. I say it out loud quite often, but I truly believe that there's a couple of aspects to this. Not everyone needs to build. One is that if it gives you energy, it will show in everything that you do. If it drains your energy, it will also show in everything that you do when it comes to community. And so I think there's a lot of people who are building and it's draining their energy. It's just something that they don't enjoy, and you can feel it. So that's one thing. And I think the second thing is that some people are doing this without really thinking about the resourcing required and all of that kind of stuff. And so just do it later. You can partner with other folks. You can be a part of existing communities. You don't always have to build your own. And I think that goes hand in hand with sort of like the third point is you have to be a good community member to build a community. You have to know, like the village. You need to be a good villager to be a part of a village. And I think we're losing a lot of that. And so I just think people need to pause and just think about whether they really want to do this based on some of those factors that I shared.
I love that you said that because I think the minute I open my LinkedIn, everybody is building a community. Whether they have the budget, resources, the right subject matter experts for that community is very secondary on their mind, right? So I just wanted to know, do you think community is having a comeback, or do you think it's completely different from what community used to be in the past?
I don't think it ever went away. I think it goes through periods of sexiness and like non-sexiness. I think we're in a period of semi-sexiness right now. We were really sexy during the pandemic, right? We didn't have a choice, especially doing things virtually, and that became super sticky. But coming out of the pandemic, it's not sticky anymore, and a lot of people haven't pivoted. They think that the old playbook is going to work. So I wouldn't say that it was better in the past. All I know is that, I was forged from analog community. You met in person, and then digital came later, and then I went really deeply into that. There's something about bridging the two now that feels like it's a responsibility. So I feel really strongly about that as a community builder myself, that it's now my responsibility to help humans touch grass. And so maybe nothing different, but the fact that this needs to be intentional because we are moving to a world that's increasingly screen based and not human connection based.
Okay, so given that the role of a community manager swings wildly between sexy and not sexy, how have you seen the role of the community manager shift over the years, right? Especially when it comes to a marketing lens today.
So when I started, there wasn't a name for this, and this also wasn't considered to be a hard skill. In fact, when I first went to Facebook, now known as Meta, part of the thing that we were doing was just field building for community managers and trying to elevate the position of being a community manager to something that's respectable. And what my old director used to say is that, we want someone to be able to walk up to somebody else at a bar and say, I run a Facebook group, and that to be like a wow instead of a what? And like, I really think that that's so interesting. What has happened is those skills have been codified, named. There's vocabulary around community building now. The practices have been codified. We can learn them in certification programs and whatnot. So those shifts have really happened. And I think even in terms of the way that we think about it as marketing, there's a little bit more understanding of the long tail that community is when it comes to marketing. Like a lot of us want like really quick results because we're used to paid marketing and stuff. But I feel that understanding community as a vector for just organic growth in general is understood by some who really get it and do it well. And I hope for that to continue even more because I feel like put together with other marketing strategies, and when a community team works really closely with a marketing team, you can make incredible magic. I mean, you can keep people on your platform, keep people using your product. You can help people feel like their concerns are validated. You can cut down on customer service costs. You can do all kinds of stuff. You can also just get a platform for R&D. People overlook that, and that typically costs money. But if you have a community of superfans, you can build new products from them and new services. So I think just in general, the way that CMs integrate themselves into cross-functional teams is super important. Marketing being one of them, but like for example, I worked closely with marketing, but I've also worked closely with like product teams. I love working with product teams, and then when they all three of them come together, it's super fun. So seeing it as like an ecosystem of teams working together is also really great, and that's a difference. It used to just sort of be like, oh, community's over here, and then everyone else is over here. It was considered fluffy. It's not so fluffy anymore.
With the codification of community, or at least that there is some sort of a direction as to what community building really is, do you think that there are some realistic KPIs that brands should be setting when it comes to community building?
Yeah, I think the KPI depends. First of all, it depends just on like community should also always align to the North Star of the business, right? There needs to be some connection. Otherwise, why are you doing it? I came across a community recently. The community is great, but it has nothing to do with what the company is building. They're building an amazing tech product, and the community is holding these really deep conversations with women. These women don't even know what the company is building on the other side. So I found that to be really, really strange. But I think in terms of KPIs, like some of the ones that I've seen that are really compelling is just trying to track like offset of customer service costs, like CS costs. Community as a vector for serving and hearing issues and resolving those issues before it ever becomes a ticket, like an official ticket, and community managers being equipped to do that. Some of the other things are thinking, the way that you would track sales funnels and thinking about them as longer, like community as a longer funnel or an upsell funnel or whatever. I think like those are like hard KPIs. But the other thing is things like NPS scores and just like overall, what is the sentiment that people have about a particular brand? And this is sort of like for the community for business world. I also come from the social impact space. So community is also a way that some of the KPIs could be that you are trying to co-build something with a community that you're doing an intervention in. So that becoming a space where people are giving feedback, they're offering solutions, they're giving resources, and there's that exchange. There's also KPIs that I've seen done sort of on my side of the house. So it varies, depends on what you need. But if it doesn't connect to sort of like your North Star for where your business or organization is going, it's really difficult to sort of then hone in on that thing that you should be tracking to find out if you're successful or not.
And do you think these would vary wildly for a non-big brand, like a startup community that's being built? How can you track it in a way that feels like, okay, it's still new, but there is like it's promising at least?
I really like, personally, one thing that I always do in the early stages is look at what's happening qualitatively. What are the types of conversations that are coming up organically before we're even trying to push? What is the behavior? What are people just mentioning on their own? For me, that's always given good signal to where we might need to be headed. Like there's some sort of stars aligning thing that happens where you're either getting early signal about a direction that you should go in or problem that you're going to have, or the sentiment might be, are you landing correctly? Is what you're trying to do relevant? And so the qualitative stuff for me really matters in the early stages. And also just like making sure that on the flip side that you're valuing everything that somebody's contributing, because in a smaller group, the types of validation that you offer for folks participating is really different. And so you can also find out what are motivational factors for the folks that will be buying your product, using your service, like involved in some of the community change that you're trying to affect, and also give enough shine to them that they feel motivated. Like early days in a community is the best time to find ambassadors. They're in when you open the door, they have been with you along the journey, and they get really hype about this kind of stuff. So when folks are sort of elevated to that type of role, they're helping with onboarding, they sort of become community experts, and they've been there since the early days. You walk away with, well, an insider who might be able to get information that you might not be able to get later, but also folks that will ease the workload and the burden, the community burden for you because they feel really invested because they've been there from the get go. So the way that you think about success, I think, is slightly different. Not necessarily like it's like just KPI, but it's, are we creating the conditions for people to be really excited about what we're doing? And are those people themselves getting excited and stepping and wanting to step into leadership with us? And that to me is like really good early signal.
I would love to kind of have the same question, but answer it in a more Indian perspective. So,
Mm.
you are talking about how we're so used to meta ads, right? India thrives on meta ads. Every brand, whether it's a startup or a big MNC, will not have money to hire more people, but they will somehow have money to get more ads from Meta, like pay Meta for more ads, right? And then when we talk to them about community, one question that comes up a lot is KPI. Like a meta, like a performance marketer can guarantee my CAC will reduce by 10% in 3 months. Or like an SEO expert will be like, sure, our blogs will rank higher. When it comes to a community manager, building a community in India using apps like WhatsApp, I'm not sure what KPI to even look at. So, I mean, do you have like some sort of a vague idea as to what KPIs brands in India should look at when speaking about building communities?
Yeah, I think like one tactic that I used when I was a consultant with a very popular global media platform that is creating like short form storytelling. They had a series of Facebook groups. They were simultaneously doing all of the growth marketing and the ads and stuff, and they were expanding into different markets. But what I saw when I sort of went a little bit deeper is there were people trying to have conversations on their ads. And there were people trying to have conversations in other spaces where they weren't being acknowledged. It was specifically either about issues that they were having with their product or questions about the series that they were advertising, or even just like plot questions or just like super hype fans, like, I love this story, whatever, whatever. And at that point in time, they were doing customer acquisition. So what they were doing was just trying to get people to download the app, and that was like one of the north stars, is we want to get more customers in this new market. An example of like a KPI was just a how many people downloaded the app, right? Through using a commenting strategy that was like adjacent to community building. So it wasn't in a community container, it wasn't contained. It was Richard Millington's community everywhere theory. Community is where the people are. We just start talking to people in the comments. So if they were super hype fans, we say, "Oh my gosh, we're so glad that you love this character. By the way, did you know? Or did you see episode, did you see episode 3? What did you think when she did this?" Really, in a really personable way. If somebody else had a question, where can I find the rest? Because they were putting snippets of the stories on all the meta platforms and even on TikTok. Where can I find the rest of the story? Because inevitably they would leave it at a cliffhanger, right? That's a part of the thing. But it wasn't intuitive for people that they needed to get onto an app to listen to the rest of it. You think it would be, but it wasn't. Especially if you're just seeing an ad and then all of a sudden that ad disappears and you don't know where to find it. So you remember it and you get hooked, but you're not sure what action you should take at the end. Not everyone's going to follow that logical conclusion. So we just started commenting, "Hey, you can hear the rest of the story here. We're so happy that you liked it, blah, blah, blah." Conversions for app downloads went from 2% to 10% in a month and a half. So close to 10%. It wasn't what that company felt like was a big enough bump to justify a full community team. But do they still use the strategy today with their channel team that's putting up all that content? So they'd have given that duty to their content marketers that are like putting up that content and doing all the Facebook and TikTok and all that scheduling. The comment strategy is a part of that. I would say that's a win because it translated into real customers and real revenue. So it's just an example of how sort of you can use some tactics to help deepen the work that you're already doing. Now, the performance marketers are paying for ads. If 100 people are commenting on your ad and you're not talking back, it's a missed opportunity. They're trying to reach you. You're just leaving them in ether.
Okay, that makes sense. And I'm guessing the way people interact on TikTok or like Meta in the West is wildly different than the way Indians interact on platforms that are available to us. So I'm guessing that same theory applies to like communities in the West versus like India, right? And one, I know one area that really needs communities, whether people agree to this or not, is women's health, because women need a space to kind of like just be themselves. So I just wanted to know, because you've done community both in the West and now you're working with some like a brand in India, how do you think community would differ? And do you think women in India see community differently than women in the West?
Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to this. So I'll try to package it as best that I can. I think that the need is equal in all places. In general, the internet has brought a revolution for women to be seen and heard that is unparalleled to any other point in time in history. So I'll say that as a panacea, like we should accept that no matter where in the world it's been important for folks. But net, it's specifically in women's health. In India, you're working with folks that have a much lower knowledge of overall health, right? And you also have, it's not that there's no taboo in other countries outside of India, but the taboo is really different. And so conversations in containers that are outside of India or like in what we would call Western countries or developed countries or whatever tend to just sort of be really straight to the point. The questions are straight to the point. And especially when you have platforms or you're using containers where people can ask questions anonymously, they're going to talk about sex. They're going to talk about bodily functions. They're going to talk about chronic diseases that they're dealing with. They're just going to talk about everything. With Indian women, depending on the type of Indian woman, you will have to take her a little bit on a journey. You'll have to feed her a little bit of content first, and then she'll start asking questions. But the difference is that a woman in other countries, I don't think I've ever articulated this out loud, so thank you for this question. This is just what I've seen. This is my observation. It may not be a universal truth, but my observation is that in other countries you'll have somebody share their experience and you'll get a lot of me too, me too, me too, me too, me too, me too. In India, someone will share their experience and you will get full on other questions, tangents, things that are not even related in relation to that because it's brought up something inside of that woman that needs to be answered. So this thing about doubt clearing, an Indian woman in most communities is not just going to read something and just apply that to her life. She needs someone to validate her experience, what she's seeing, and that the solution that you're proposing is right for her. And so you will have 10,000 of the same question. Is this right for me? I am 46 years old. I'm blah, blah, blah. You'll have 57 gazillion versions of that question. It is not empathetic for us to say as community managers, and trust me, I've tried to say this, and it's just not realistic to say, please search the community to find answers for this, right? And the three of us have seen that all the time. We see it especially like on Reddit. In Reddit, like for example, in Reddit midlife communities, the mods are like, this question has been answered gazillions of times. Just search the community, and the community members will go rabid, like rabid dogs, especially the communities that are more US centric. In India, you cannot say that because there is something very primal in every Indian woman that needs her situation to be cleared. And it's not only online. I have seen this played out in real time in a physical space. So I attended a midlife women's conference that was focusing on menopause and perimenopause. There was a doctor that was on the panel. She was the first session. Brilliant, brilliant doctor, like really, really great doctor. And out of that room of like 250 women, there was question after question after question after question about individual situations that people were asking in public because they were desperate to get their question answered about themselves. So you can't sit with information and digest it and apply it. You need to know, and you need that validation from an expert or a multitude of peers that what you're about to do, what you're thinking, what you're experiencing is normal and is right for you.
I'm I'm assuming the women's midlife health segment is extremely underserved in India, especially. Do you think there are other domains that are like as underserved as well, especially when it comes to like building an online community or a container for them?
Yeah, my first foray into like hardcore community building in India was like a mental health and sexual health adjacent platform. Those two segments are ridiculously underserved. As is connected to a lot of these issues, whether physical or mental health, are connected to things like family based violence, domestic violence, sexual assault, healing from trauma, all of that kind of stuff. Those segments are still completely underserved. There's even more places than ever before, right? Telehealth and like mental health is becoming available day by day, but those are the types of things that one space is going to speak to a particular type of woman, something else is going to speak to a particular type of woman, something that's non-community based and that's just a one-on-one is going to speak to another type of woman. So I think those spaces will continue to be underserved because on the flip side, on the demand side, it's also really taboo just to talk about a lot of that stuff. So I've been having conversations with a few of my community friends that build communities for women and have lots of midlife women, just to understand like what are you hearing in your community and to just clock it. Like, I am seeing this in your community. Is that what you're seeing? What's happening in your DMs? And the mental health thing came up as sort of like these are the things that people don't want to say out loud. In another community, one of the community managers mentioned that no, they're just getting like I'm feeling really warm at night. What does that mean? So it's still just like basic doubt clearing. And then no one's like, from all of the people that I've had conversations with so far, and I have many to go, they're still not asking questions about, so they're asking questions about like intimate relations between husband and wife. But as a community leader friend put it that I just had a conversation with today, she's like, intimacy is so much more than that. It's not just about the act of sex. It's about so much more. So I think those are all places where there's just sort of a lack of spaces in general, but also just a lack of safety in society to really open up about those things. And lastly, I think that there is a health adjacent again, but sort of identity role shifting. What does it mean? What is a season of life? How do we categorize this? Also loneliness. So I have a friend in Bangalore who runs spaces where feminist women can get together and they have conversations. And one of the topics of conversation that they had was loneliness. And one of the meetups, she had three women like over the age of 60 show up and they all just said we're lonely. But the framing around that loneliness was completely different for them. Like, but we're dealing with it. Like, we feel invisible, but we're dealing with it. Not sort of like us and younger generations that feel lonely and need to do something about it, that want to talk about it, that are seeking for connection. They've made peace with that loneliness. It's there, but they have accepted it as a part of their life.
You know, something very interesting you said, which is people are just asking basic question. And I'm going to take a guess and say that these communities are in India,
Hmm.
because what happens in India and something that people forget is that culture plays a huge part in how we are, what we say, how we talk, how we dress. So what happens in most of these communities, if there is no way to be anonymous, we really don't ask the questions we really want to know about. And that's one of the reasons we end up going to Reddit. Reddit blew up because we could now ask questions about sex, orgasm, body fluids, as crazy as I've cheated on my partner, what do I do about it, without having like an identity stuck to the person who's asking the question. So right now I feel like all the sexual health brands have such a big opportunity to just build a community. I know they think putting content on Instagram and going viral will really help them build that community because people are talking in the comment section. But if you look at the comment section, it's mainly men
It's men. Yeah.
cracking jokes or tagging their friends or like just putting up emojis, making memes out of it, but it's not a conversation. And I know that for a brand seems like, oh my god, my post did so well, look at all the engagement. But you will never know what a woman wants because no woman will go on like a sexual health brand and like comment something or ask a question that's so deeply personal to her with her name, photo, if she's a creator, her profile's open, like all of those attached to it. So I really do think like right now we have a big opportunity for all these brands that we have in India, whether that's Besharam, the Sassy Thing, My Muse, they can actually build communities that are not Reddit spaces. Because I know all of them have built Reddit spaces and most of their engagement or community conversations are, should I buy this product or the other product? But there's no other conversation happening. And those brands can stand for so much more and they can create so much more change if they just have some patience and like kind of create like a safe space for their people to kind of be themselves. And then the brand loyalty, the sales, those things that will happen. And the loyalty they'll get then will be insane. Because
Absolutely.
if they're able to do that and tomorrow my muse starts selling like water bottles, all your community members are going to buy the damn water bottle. Just be there for them right now.
Absolutely. And I think that's so interesting. So like a decade ago, more than a decade ago, like I had this platform called Love Doctor. Okay, so it was counseling on sex and relationships. I partnered with Love Treats, which was a sex toy brand in India, one of the first. The way that Love Treats approximated this, and even the way Love Doctor approximated this feeling of community, on WhatsApp, Love Doctor had broadcast lists. Like there weren't a lot of Indians on Reddit at that time. Like I wasn't even on Reddit at the time. Reddit existed, but it like wasn't super popular globally. It was an American thing. But there were broadcast lists, and every day we would send out broadcasts with a question of the day. And this is literally a question that a person from Love Doctor, one of the community members said, because we had counselors that would answer these questions and help people work through things. But they said, I want a peer opinion. So we'd send it out as a broadcast. Then we would aggregate all the replies and we'd send it back out. So we approximated community that way to keep it safe because otherwise you have somebody saying hi in your DMs, right? And I think like one of the things that I've seen in public spaces, especially for sexual health brands, and I have faced this because I don't care. So I'll comment on like Sangya Project's something or My Muse's something or Lizu's whatever, right? And I've done that before. My DMs were filled with weirdos. And so I agree with you. I think that like I think there's a way to be creative about making it feel community like while retaining the sanctity and the safety and the privacy of somebody. Anonymity does that, but anonymity still doesn't protect you from the DMs unless you've shut all of that down, which I think a lot of people are doing, especially on Reddit now. They don't allow, like, if you are in X chromosomes India, a lot of the women there do not allow men or anyone to DM them. They've just shut that down. Or as we know, there's a throwaway and then there's a main, or there's a on Instagram, there's a Finsta, and there's a main account. So people are doing this in their own ways, but why not make it easier knowing that it's still really unsafe to be public about your opinions? And then community hack, right? Disaggregate the information, write it down, make it content, and send it back out. That loop is not being closed by these brands. Love Treats had a chat on their website. So sometimes I would man the chat. The founder, Ute, and I would man the chat. And we would get all kinds of questions from product recommendations to like, is my thing big enough? Or how do I, like, what are some exciting ideas about foreplay for us? Even just like relationship related questions. Whenever there was like a trend, we would send it back out to the newsletter. So I think we need to be able to, in India, approximate intimacy without creating actual intimacy because intimacy is not safe. I'm saying this out loud, and I hate that I have to say this out loud, but we're not in a situation yet where people can just really say whatever they want to say and they would be protected. So people get more gated, there's doxing that still happens here, there's all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I think those of us that are on this side and talking to brands like I know that the two of you do, how can you approximate space for conversation without actually creating a completely open space where everyone can, where it's a free for all? It's just something I get curious about.
Right. I think building on that, so intimacy is not the best idea, especially for like women's online spaces in India. What else do you think Indian brands should really consider when they're building communities or spaces for women?
Patience with this doubt clearing need. I think this is number one. No matter what you do, no matter how much you educate, people want their questions answered. And you may just share something about this thing, and you're going to get 20 questions that say, this is my situation. Is this me? The answer is yes, but they need to hear you say it. So patience with that, I think, is number one. I think the second is that in okay, and I'm just going to give you the example of me. I'm not a brand, but I am a small time content creator on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, and I'm just playing around with it. So engagement that is in my face and the conversations that are happening to me directly are one part of it. Way later on, I will meet people who will say, I saw this and I loved it. Or they will slide into my DMs later on and say, I saw this and I loved it. So I think, like, don't underestimate that there's a ton of people lurking and watching you. And they may never interact with you, but you just need to keep doing the right thing. And that's it. For every person that comes up to you And what I used to say when I was in this space is the barrier to entry is always high because there is a psychological barrier that we will never get over. We're still trying to deprogram ourselves, and that's colonialism, that's conditioning, that's all kinds of stuff that's happening. That's like gender. Anyway, it's just a hodgepodge of like fuckery, basically. Can I say that on this podcast? Okay, sorry. You can bleep me out if I can't say that. But so when somebody interacts, you better be rewarding them. They better get a response. They need to be visible. You need to thank them. That is non negotiable for any brands working with women. That person has likely, and depending on what the topic is, what the platform is, what the product does, what the company does, has likely started and stopped that comment 3 or 4 times. So I think for me, these are things that I need brands to understand and where I don't see the love and the patience going into community building because you just don't understand women. You understand them from a business perspective. You have done your market research and you have a TG, but you don't understand them.
I'm part of a few communities where I think I mean, I'm a lurker there. I'm there for like research. I'm there to like understand what people want, what's happening in the women's space, especially the peri and menopause space. And a lot of times I see people asking questions and they will have a subject matter expert and they'll just put like a hyphen to a question they might have answered for somebody else. And it's the person's responsibility to kind of click on it, and then WhatsApp will take you all the way on top, and then you have to kind of read that stuff. And I really think after that situation, I just feel like maybe they will never talk to you again, right? Like you almost had them. Like for them to share something so deep and so personal, and then you just going like already answered, check up, or please search the chat. That's too rude. And I feel like because most brands, I would want to blame it on the brands. That's where I'm at. Like if you don't have enough resources to hire a full-time subject matter expert, maybe don't have your chat open all the time. Maybe have it on the weekends, or just ask them to like send you all the questions and then these guys can answer them all at once, or figure out a way to like coordinate with your expert. But you can't have your expert giving rude answers or like replying with such chat gpt like scripts, because we all know how to use chat gpt. If the women are on your WhatsApp group, they are asking good questions about their health, that probably means that they know how to use chat gpt. They don't trust that shit. Just answer them the way you want them to know about your brand, the way you want them to like feel when they talk about your brand, right?
Yeah. I think that's something that I also think brands should keep in mind. I think that's something Sheena and I always discuss, that the responsibility and the role of a community manager is to humanize it. You're in this container because people are sick of being sold to. They're sick of seeing all these ads. And now we're going down the war path of just AI ads now. So you don't know what to trust and you really don't have that human connection online anymore. So when somebody's asking you a question, somebody is reaching out. Any engagement is an instance of people reaching out. That's as simple as that in the community setting, right? And you just give them a very stock standard answer. You don't even use their name. You don't tag them. You don't do these like smaller things. You're eroding that relationship one message at a time. And that's, I think, something a lot of brands need to understand, which is why a community manager who is empathetic is essential. This is not just something you can hand off to an intern with the chat GPT like playbook. Okay, these are the stock standard answers you can give, and this is, how you should be running it. That's just like the fast track to kill a community.
I agree with both of you, and I think the thing is that a lot of these communities are reinforcing power dynamics and inequalities in our society in India that have long been unfair, right? So I think this problem with the elevation of the expert to the level that they are. I'm not knocking that you need a medical doctor's opinion in some cases, but we had this side discussion. We have all been in communities where we've seen a doctor be completely very rude. Rude is a nice way of putting it. Disrespectful to people answering questions. And I don't know if that's a function of that person not getting compensated for their time, but you are no longer providing a service if you deliver it in that way. Now, in that case, then I feel like it is the community manager's responsibility to intervene or help shape, like, are you not onboarding your experts to say this is the way that we like to talk to people here, and this is our ethos, this is our vision. And in some cases I know that wasn't done, but this the gap that I see, and I'm not saying better or worse, but you both asked me about the difference between the West and India. I know as somebody who was born and raised in the US that I'm going to have to shop around for a mental health care provider that makes the most sense for me, that vibes with me, that respects me. I can't just go out onto the street and throw a rock at the 15 therapists that I know in HSR and find a good fit for my life situation. It's the same with doctors. And as you get into midlife, it's even more because not all the doctors here believe in all of the different types of therapies that are available. Some will shame you into only taking natural roots and they may not work for you. Some will shame you because you may have a BMI that's not considered to be normal. All of that stuff is so common in India. You get shamed by medical healthcare providers a lot. And so that bedside manner and that lack of bedside manner is so common that in understanding these things and these being barriers to why people may reach out for help, as a person who's building a community for women, wouldn't you want to change that? Have you not that like I'm like why are you not thinking about this? That's what makes me upset. Have you not thought about this as someone building in this space? You say in your we support women and we love women, but your actions don't show that. I'm like, you could have chat GPT'd that too. You're not chat GPTing the right things. Even chat GPT knows to be sycophantic and to help people feel good about themselves. Why don't you know that? So anyway, this is enough of strong opinions with Avni, but I feel so strongly about this because I see it all the time and I'm like, you have an opportunity to change things and that creates I've been in situations where we've created that. And your community is so sticky. People will never leave. And I hate to say it, but they'll buy whatever you want them to buy. And then they'll go tell 10,000 of their friends. And they'll bring, they'll refer 16,000 people to your community. And you can also manipulate it. But what I'm saying is that don't manipulate it. Like, really believe in it because it matters. And that's what we need to change here. Like, accessibility is also about the fact that everyone who is seeking health advice or has an issue that wants an answer deserves dignity. And I think that some of these communities are building spaces, but they're not offering basic dignity, and it pisses me off.
Or maybe no one has told them how to do their job. So even if they do get experts that are rude or disrespectful, I don't think they realize it's their like responsibility to make sure that you're building this community. You have to protect it. If you're building something with a mission, with a purpose in mind, it is your responsibility to like make sure it's safe. It is for the people. That's why it's a community. So I do want to know, like, if tomorrow a fresher is coming to Avni, what advice would you give her?
Boy, yeah, I've done this before. I've trained 30 community managers who were green. Okay, the first thing that I was taught, and I need to give a shout out to Sairi Chahel from Shiro's. And the first thing she taught me, because she imbibed this and she taught me this, is that you can train for the mechanics of community, but you cannot train for voice. So what she would have us do is whenever somebody was applying, we set them loose in the community, not as a community manager, but just as a voice. And we saw how they interacted, how they wrote, what were their instincts. Because if they could pick up on the voice, then they could do anything. Then we could train them for anything. Then everything else is just a playbook. But if you don't get the voice right off the bat, that's really hard to teach. So I think the first thing is you need to understand what is the voice and what is the vibe. Like, you need to catch the aura of the community and you need to be able to share that aura back out tenfold. If you don't understand that, and if you can't feel it, that means A, that the purpose and the mission of the community is not clear enough. The brand does not define that enough, so you need to ask questions. Or you need to practice how do you change tone and tonality when you're speaking to somebody so that it's effective, right? That's just a communication effectiveness thing. That's a skill building exercise. You can send them back and say, build your skills and come back. But we ended up like hiring people for skill and they flopped. But when we hired people that understood the voice immediately, they all flourished. So I think like that's just like for me, that's my litmus test now. And I thank Sairi for that. She taught me that. It is always rung true. And for freshers that are trying to do this, before you want to get a job with a community, get in the community. Start interacting. I mean, everyone. So Buffer had a job open recently. Buffer has a Discord. Everyone and their mother that I know applied for the Buffer position. and everyone was in that Discord. Right. So I didn't apply, but I know a bunch of people that did. And I was just like sort of watching, like, are y'all able to get it? Are you mixing? Are you landing softly into the space, or are you landing like a thud without it, you know? So it's, you have a community of CXOs and someone comes in and says, "What up, peeps?" My name, it's not, don't do that. In the same way, I think that's one of the things. So, and also for freshers, I would say I would just be really real with them. Like, there's no money in this. There's no money in this. There is no money in this unless you attach yourself to another function where there is money. So you better get tight with product. You better get tight with marketing, but understand that marketing gets fired first. You better get tight. So get tight with the functions that have lasting like roots in an organization and that are layoff proof, where you add value and that are revenue drivers. Because if you don't build those additional skills, community as a function independently is not a really good job to have unless you're working for a really big company and you're making money. But even those people get laid off now. Like, how many? I don't know. I know there's a bunch of these community platforms that were out there that got picked up by private equity, and they laid off all the staff and just hired contractors, and all of their experts are gone. Even their account managers are all gone, and they've just hired new people um, that have no context to community. People in community forums are complaining about it. So even in the community world, people that are building community platforms for communities, stuff like this is happening. So align yourself with a revenue-driven function, build your skills in some other area, and make sure that out of everything, get the tone right, and then just upskill yourself. There's enough certification programs and stuff. There's enough communities of practice for community, folks, and the three of us are in so many of them. Go to those places, ask questions, and learn. You can't. I vibed my way through it. Right, none of these spaces were around when I started, but now I'm like, I better learn. I feel like I should be in all those spaces to learn from people, and that feels really relevant to me in today's Asian time. The best people that will retain community function in the era of everything being agentified and AIified will be the people that can protect and maintain humans and human connection, but also extract the ROI out of that. And I hate to say it like that, but yes, it's going to be about human connection. It's going to be about retaining that, but you also need to know, what do you do with that? How do you deliver that? How do you manage up with the information that you get? How do you contextualize what your AI is getting and be able to communicate that? So the last part of my advice would just be that your job is not only to interact with the community, but it is to convince everybody in your organization and sell everything that you're learning and all of the insights that you have. Only then will you be successful at your job. No one talks about the internal facing work that you have to do. You oftentimes have to do more internal facing work than external facing work. You're not just like going to events and setting things up. It's not just all fun. You then have to go back and write the report and do the readout and talk about what did you hit your KPIs or not? What's the strategy moving forward? So you need to be able to do all those things.
So we have this final question that we like to cap the podcast with, which is, as of today, where do you see the future of community?
I mentioned earlier, but I feel that my role in this earth moving forward is to connect humans to each other and to get them to touch grass. So, and I think that it is imperative that those of us that have this skill help people do that, because you remember how we've already seen a wave of this. Okay, so we saw a wave where the millennial aesthetic on Instagram was perfection and the Instagram aesthetic, everyone got the same face, right? Now we're seeing a backlash against that, and messiness is cool and imperfection is cool, and now alpha's coming in with a completely different, we know that we're being sold to. So now you have to buy our time. I saw this in a marketing breakdown. I need to send you guys that link. Beautiful, beautiful breakdown of the generational differences in like social selling and stuff. And I think that like the future is really, everything is going to be automated when it comes to interactions. You're not even going to know if you're speaking to a human or not. So community will mostly be automated, and there's no way that you can argue with the cost savings for like big organizations for that. But those of us that are able to convene people in real life, get them out of the paranoia that they feel because they haven't touched grass for so long, haven't met people for so long. Everyone's got a role in the revolution, and our role in the revolution is to connect people so we can build mutual aid, so that we can help each other, so that we can recreate like humanity together. but it's a skill. And so we need to recognize it's a skill, we need to preserve that skill, and we need to honor it and hone it right now. Because in 15 years, this is all going to be gone. It's going to be gone.
I was looking for a bit of a high note to end this on, but a good reality check, I think. So before we end, Avni, let the people know what you've been working on and where they can find you.
Yay. So I am stepping into communities for women in midlife. Part of that is just testing my own voice in this space. And so I am making content, still figuring it out at 40. You can find me on most content platforms and just building that slowly and intentionally. Like, I am not a virus. I don't need to go viral. And that is my motto. But the bat signal is out for women that are like me. And like I said, I'm hearing it. They may not be writing it, but I'm hearing it. So I'm just going to keep doing that. So let's have some sort of, I want to build this in public intentionally because there's not a public conversation about it. It doesn't need to be a community because right now we're still base building for this, but maybe there's something to come out of it later if there's a need. So that's one thing. I think the second thing is that I'm moving intentionally into midlife health for women. And I'd like to work deeply in that space. I care about it. I am somebody who lives with endometriosis. I am firmly in perimenopause. I just started HRT. I'm living it right now. I'm in the middle of it. I saw something on Threads. I'm trying something new to biohack myself today that I started talking about on my platform. So if you're looking for somebody to partner with on building what you're trying to build, I'm happy to do that for a fee because I've done a lot of free work in the community space. But if you're the type of person that is really thinking intentionally about this and you want somebody who has lived experience and has done some of the work to build communities, I'm happy to do that for you. Also, I'm really fascinated by products. So if you're building products in this space, just holler at me. And I'm starting a new fractional role soon. So there'll be more information about that. If there's any curiosity about this space, if you want to talk about your own experiences, we're going to be creating some spaces for that. So follow me on LinkedIn, look out for that. I'm going to be announcing something really soon, and we'd love to have you be a part of the conversation.